So hello, today I'm at St Mary's Church in Chickney in Essex, and I'd like to talk to you about the history of the church and the village itself. So Chickney is a small hamlet in Essex. It's 4.5 miles from Stansted, 4 miles from Stansted Airport. Chickney is surrounded by Essex countryside and it's 95 metres above sea level. The population is around 34, making it the smallest hamlet I have visited so far in Essex. Now you'll see just how close these planes come to where this church is. I've worked it out less than a minute apiece. Now we know that in nearby Broxted village a flint axe head was unearthed in 1979. Its age was 4000 to 2500 BC. Nearby Faxted town had a Roman settlement and villa, so we can be sure that Chickney was farmed to some degree for thousands of years. Now it's the Saxon period that has left the most clues in St Mary's Church itself, and it's one of the oldest of all the churches in Essex, and we shall look at this later. Now in 1066 we can be 100% certain that there was a church here. Siward the Barn was the Thane here, and King Edward the Confessor was the overlord here. Edward the Confessor was our last Saxon king. Now Siward himself ruled over 14 smallholders, making the population slightly bigger than today. Today's Chickney is about 14 dwellings, so it's a coincidence indeed. Now we know that 5 plough teams tilled the lands here, 20 pigs, 60 sheep, 24 goats, and even written down with 3 calves grazed the land. Now Siward the Barn is described as a landowner, a warrior. He is said to have descendant of Ulfred the Bold of Northumberland. Siward would battle against the Normans and William the Conqueror himself. He would join forces with the Danes, and Siward would be captured in 1071 at the island where Ely Cathedral stands today. Siward the Barn would be prisoner for the next 16 years. By now the old William the Conqueror, on his deathbed, released Siward the Barn from prison. Siward then enters legend. He is said to have become a mercenary to Emperor Alexios of Constantinople, today's Turkey. Soon after, the First Crusade to the Holy Land would follow. "6 days north by sea in the Sea of Azov, today's Crimea, and that is where Siward is last heard of." And here we have the public footpath sign with all the small signs attached to it. Now in 1086 the Normans had taken over Chickney. A priest was employed, most likely Siwad's priest. Ranulph Peveril was the tenant-in-chief. The new Norman lord was a man called Warren. Now Lord Warren would inherit a large farm from Siward, complete with moated defences, likely a single-storey building made of stone with defensive windows. To the rear the barns and the livestock would have lived. The parish of Chickney is virtually an island surrounded by 3 streams. It is believed that Chickney simply means Seeker's Island or Chicken's Water. The hamlet was first mentioned in 1086 when it was known as Cicerai, or something like that. Excuse my pronunciation. Now Ranulph Peveril held the power here and is cloaked in mystery. It's believed that the Ranulph was the illegitimate son of William the Conqueror himself. He would marry Enjolrica, who had been a mistress to William the Conqueror, and her relationship predates that of Ranulph's conception. Now the Peverils would hold Chickney Manor. In 1247 Hugh Peveril would be lord here, and in 1314 on to his son, also called Hugh Peveril, and 100 years further into the time of Edward III. The Bourchier family would hold the lordship, several centuries more, until Henry Bourchier, Earl of Essex, 1540, died without a male son. Now the Bourchiers here had an incredible standing in the royal courts and England's history. Looking around Chickney today you would never know. Now William Bourchier was first count, fought at the Battle of Agincourt with Henry V in 1415. His son Henry would become the first Earl of Essex and own Chickney's Manor. He would see considerable military action in France and England in the War of the Roses. Henry had a son, also called Henry, and he would serve King Henry VII and VIII. He was a member of the King's Privy Council. He also saw battle in France and England. He became captain of the King's bodyguard. In 1540 he would break his neck, falling from his horse. Henry Bourchier, 2nd Earl of Essex, is buried in nearby Little Easton. Now without a male heir the earldom became extinct, and it was down to his daughter Anne to marry. Anne would marry William Parr, who was the first Marquis of Northampton. He was a brother to Queen Catherine Parr. Now Henry VIII's last wife. Now William Parr would lose the manor here, but not his neck, due to his association with Lady Jane Grey. In 1558 Queen Mary restored the Chickney lands back to William Parr. Then the Colin family of 1606. We have a Colonel Evan Lloyd, and finally the Cramers, and you will see the Cramer funeral hatchment inside. It's a long history of families, and just imagine the countless generations of field workers and staff that are never mentioned in the journals of history, but would have supported all these noble families. I read that 2 almshouses for 2 dwellers existed, one on Chickney's Green. Amazingly, the cottage still survives, complete with thatched roof. Now, the almshouses were established for the poor folk of the town or village. Now, in 1889, the population here had declined to around 24. The Church of St Mary ceased to register baptisms, weddings and funerals, and was merged with Broxted's church. Now during World War I, men would make the ultimate sacrifice from this timely hamlet. Their names are on the memorial in Broxted's church. Elsenham and Thaxted Light Railway would pass through Chickney in 1913. Its station was called Sibney's after the farm here, and it would close in 1953. Now in World War II, it would see lorries arrive at Cherry Green, not far from here. The soldiers would mix and pour concrete, and they would build a Type 28 pillbox, positioned to allow weapons to fire along its lines in case an invasion by the German army took place. Today, 6,000 pillboxes survive across the country out of an original 28,000. Now we should look at the church itself. St Mary's the Virgin Church. It's built in flint and pebble rubble off these very fields. It's part covered in lime plaster, and the dressings are in limestone and clunch, which is a hard chalk. If we look closer, we can see how simple its construction is. We should look at the tower, the West Tower. It's 7 foot square and it's built in the 14th century. Now it's built in 3 stages and it's got a pyramidal, can't even say it, roof on it. Now in 1902 the tower was struck by lightning, causing fire damage to the spire and the nave and the roof itself. The south porch is a simple lean-to porch from the 18th or 19th centuries. Inside we've got 15th century timbers. '15th century, isn't that amazing? So this doorway itself is 14th century, and if we look we've got a fair amount of graffiti. Huge amount of graffiti. On the other side, much the same. You can see an ancient headstop there. Look. And let's go inside. I'll take my cap off. Now we're facing the nave. It measures 31 feet by 18 feet. It's pre-conquest in age. Some experts believe it's possibly from 850 AD. Now this is possible. Corringham's parish church also dates from this age, built to ward off the Viking attacks. It's most likely there's a connection. Now the southeast and the northeast corners have acute angles built without corners or coins, which would be this corner and this one. Now we're looking at the south wall and the south window. It's the original crudely shaped double splayed window, only seen in several flint churches in East Anglia. Now the roof itself is 14th century. It's got 3 king posts, trusses carrying a central purlin. Now facing the west tower, we can see it's a slightly different design. You can see there's no king post here. Now we're facing the tiny 7-foot square tower. The west window is a beautiful piece of glass. Now if we look above, we can see the stone to the tower has been worn away from 1470 from the bell ropes. (1470). Now there are 2 bells by John Keble of 1470. The bell is inscribed with Ad Celi Sina Perdicat Nos Caterina, excuse me in Latin, to heaven from Sinai lead us Catherine. I've been fortunate enough to visit St. Catherine's Monastery in Mount Sinai in Egypt, and it's a 4th century monastery run by Greek Orthodox priests. And inside the walls a small mosque sits, and if you ever get the chance to visit, I recommend it. It's a most unusual place. Just in front of the West Tower there's a small board that explains the dates of the building. Here you see a lot of Saxon words there, so you can tell it's very old. When you're walking through the south door, you will see a large funeral hatchment, which is from the Kramer family, I believe. Now, traditionally, this would be placed outside the deceased house, and to notify the villagers, I guess, and then it would be brought in to the church. Now we're looking at the old pews. Now we're facing the chancel, which measures 26 feet by 16 feet, and this is pre-conquest also. If we look into this south-east corner, we've got an unusual arch that's no longer there, and a piece of masonry from the window itself. if we pan around, we've got an unusual structure here. This goes all the way through to the other side. I'll show you the other side. So facing from the chancel itself, now if we look above it, there's something else on the wall. No idea what that is. Now, just like Butsbury, this church has got no electricity. So you can see a nice chandelier there, which will illuminate the building nicely. So now we shall enter the chancel itself. We pan around, we've got a really old organ there. Looks like a foot operated one. Guess it's Victorian or Edwardian. Look at the detail. And above it we've got one of these fortified windows. Guess it's a Norman window lancet. And there's a great deal of these plants in this church. And an amazing reading desk. Just look at that. I should imagine this is not made for comfort. If we look, we can see this beautiful old book is embossed with the name of the church itself. Wow. Just like to point out these tiles. So I found out the old reading desk is from 1858. It's in a Gothic style with a towel crocketed back. So it looks like when this church was heavily renovated in 1858. Now we're facing the altar slab. In the 1858 renovations, the altar slab was found buried in the floor here. I believe the nave floor. Most probable it was buried in the English Reformation about 1540. Henry VIII soldiers had dynamited nearby Tilty Abbey around 1536. It must have sent shivers to the clergy here. Their beloved wooden rood screen would have been smashed and burnt. The church window glass would have been knocked out, probably using a poleaxe. But the soldiers would not smash their altar slab, and so it stayed buried for 322 years. Now, the Reverend Robert Burdett Burgess had paid for the church's renovations in 1858. He took considerable risk allowing this altar to be reset, for in 1858 it was illegal to do so in the Anglican churches, just like his predecessor 322 years back. The good Reverend took an executive decision. I've seen these crosses before on altar slabs. And there's normally 4, which there is. Should be 1 on each corner. I'm not sure the significance. And 4th one there. So set in the north wall, there is compartments, recesses for, I guess, the holy bread and wine. And unusually, they've got the mirror image on the other side. An old desk that's seen better days, got legs on it. Now, if you follow this stone shelf all the way round, just going to show you the ends of them. Very ornate. On the other side, to show you the nave ceiling. We should finish off by looking at this old font. It says on the placard here, entering through the 15th century doorway of the south porch, the visitor can see on the left an exceptionally fine font of the early 15th century, beautifully carved and sculptured, and bearing shields of the Bray books and the Fitzwalters. This is the Fitzwalters. This must be the Bay books. And it's got a really nice 19th century cover. So Tudor rose. And then walking around the other sides. So we've got the north side, northwest, and the west. There are no family crests on there. So now we shall leave the church. Always graffiti, look. Now, I believe this church is open daily until about 4 p.m. I was just looking at all this, all these cutouts. So this is most likely They say it's 15th century. It's most likely from a previous building. Incredible age. Right, keep these closed and it stops birds getting in. So this church is part of the 5 parishes. So Chickney Church, Broxted Church, Tilty Church, Great Eastern, Little Eastern. Yeah. So I believe they use it for special occasions, but it's not such an active church. But even so, it's still open. Remember, this could be possibly one of the oldest stone churches in Essex. Could be from 850. If not, it's definitely pre-conquest. So looking at the Chancellor Wall, I believe this outline is the original chancel. If I'm not mistaken, they may have extended it from here. So now we're in northwest Essex, so we're getting quite close to Elsenham and not far to the border. It's possible they've got some Roman tiles in there. And this is what they're talking about, the nave has no coins as such. So it's just masonry. So basically they have not, normally you'd have brick and tile or something squaring it off. On here they've just used rubble. Most unusual. Again, it gives its age away by this small detail. Look at that window. Completely built for defence. Whether it was defence against Viking attack. Wow, it's quite fascinating. I mean, either way, we did have Viking habitation there for about 40 years from King Canute the Great. So they would have lived there anyway under Danish rule. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you very much.